Sometimes you can tell you're in the hood by the gym. Like there's
by
no
the gym?
By the gym. Yes, if there's no mesh on the basketball rim, you're in the hood.
My hometown messed me up. She won big on a Timmy's cup. I heard about it at the Rotary Club. That's so Canardian. Still don't stop.
This is Canardian, the podcast gossiping about Canadian hometowns. I'm Katie Lohr, author of Pod the North, the newsletter for Canadian podcasters. I am joined by Alex Whitfield, host and creator of the Hustle Over Everything podcast and the founder of Whitmedia Studios, a podcast studio based in the heart of Oshawa, Ontario. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie. Really appreciate it.
I am super pumped to have you here because we are going to talk about Scarborough. But first, I have to ask you, what is the neighborhood of Scarborough that is your hometown, and how would you describe the vibe of it in 5 words or less?
Oh, man. Okay, so the neighborhood of Scarborough is my hometown. I have 2.
Okay.
One is Malvern. That's where I grew up in from 0 to 13. And then I'll say Agincourt, where I was there from about 14 to 21. Those are like my 2 major neighborhoods. So Malvern is where I call home because I feel like that's what really made me me. Okay, so it's in Malvern, immigrant heavy, immigrant town. Like it's so focused on the different cultures that are there that it feels like it's not Canada. It feels like somewhere else. It's an up and coming neighborhood, you know, and you can find anything there. It's literally yours to discover. Like there's like a high-end library. There's soccer, basketball, volleyball, all being played there. It's just really anything you want in terms of on the good end and on the bad end. You know, it has a lot of aspects to it. So Malvern is definitely something that, if whatever you want to make out of it, you can make.
Ooh, it's so interesting that you say this because in all of my deep philosophical research that I did on Reddit and stuff, what you said is totally accurate based off of what I found, which is that Malvern in Scarborough is its own like little city. I was reading some stuff about people who grew up there who had been there for like a number of years and then ventured out into other parts of Canada. And they were like, oh, like, that's not Canada. Like, they had their own like version of sort of what their perception of Canada was. And then once they sort of like ventured out and visited other cities around the country, they were like, oh, it's not as diverse as this. It's not as like welcoming as this. It doesn't have like all these amazing restaurants like I was expecting. And there's like quite a culture shock, like leaving this specific neighborhood of Scarborough, which is super interesting. Has this been your experience?
For sure. Once you leave Malvern and leave Scarborough, it's totally different. You know what? I'd say the closest thing that Scarborough reminds me of is actually China.
Oh, interesting.
So I went to China for a layover for 24 hours. And when I went there, I was shocked at how close it felt to Scarborough and to Malvern, but not just Malvern, Agincourt. I'll be more specific there because Scarborough has so much different cultures going on. And if you were to drive through Scarborough, you see a lot of Chinese restaurants, a lot of Chinese buildings. So when I went to China, I was like, oh, this feels just like home.
Ooh, cool. Okay, so let me give you my tourism board pitch of what of what Malvern specifically is, because like there are so many neighborhoods in Scarborough that are very different from each other, which is very interesting. So our conversation is going to specifically focus on Malvern, the neighborhood. Malvern, Ontario, part of Scarborough in Ontario. It is the largest district of the city of Toronto, which is Scarborough. Malvern is also sometimes referred to as the Vern, is what I found online. And it's largely a residential neighborhood, home to around 60 different cultures, and the population is around 44,315 people, which is like so many people for a neighborhood. On the northeast corner of Malvern neighborhood, it backs up to the grounds of the Toronto Zoo, which is also like a shock to me. The neighborhood otherwise features like a variety of strip malls, some beloved mom and pop restaurants, and apparently a rapid disappearance of McDonald's locations. And it is the hometown of notable Canadian YouTuber Lily Singh. What am I missing here?
Cardinal Official. He's from
No
Malvern.
way. Okay, didn't know this. Toronto music
modern
icon.
Yep, Marlon Palmer, comedic icon, I think is from Malvern as well. Those are two big ones. Preem, which is Drake's right-hand guy and has hit songs with Drake as well, is from Malvern. He's from Empingham. I remember watching a Drake music video and seeing my church in a Drake music video. I'm like, what the heck's going on there? And because that church is on the same street that Preem, Drake's right-hand man, grew up on. So yeah, that's like the connection between Malvern and the city. Another movie just got shot based on Malvern called Morningside. And that was an amazing movie. I highly suggest you guys check it out. Man, a lot of talent comes from Malvern, I can't lie. Malvern and Brampton have like some of the most amazing talent coming out of there.
So in my research, I received like numerous signs that Malvern has a bit of like an underdog story. I will say I found literal actual signs of this. So on Instagram, the account at Scarborough Spots posted like a series of photos of actual spray painted signs that are like sitting, or at the time were sitting around the Malvern neighborhood. One of them said, "Take away all the good times." And another one said, "The Malvern we know and the Malvern they talk about are two different things." And then another one said, and it had sort of tick boxes next to it, it said, "Malvern is known for a working class, violence, showing love, and surviving the odds." So, like, what do we think about these signs? Have you seen these in the neighborhood at all? Because I don't know how recently you went back.
No, I've never. I think I was back. I was back there like a few weeks ago to get some food.
Okay, nice.
Because the food is amazing. You know, when I say it's yours to discover, that's what I mean. Like, you can discover anything there in terms of good and bad. So, for the guys that want to go down that path, you can definitely do that in Malvern. But for the people that want to go down the good path too, there's a really good option for that as well, you know? So growing up, like, there was guys that were more in the hood and more doing their own thing. But there was also an amazing library and an amazing gym that felt like super high quality, you know? Like, sometimes you could tell that you're in the hood by the gym. Like, there's no...
The gym?
By the gym, yes. If there's no mesh on the basketball rim, you're in the hood. You know what I'm saying? For sure. If there's no mesh, listen. It's like going to the gas station and they make you pay before you pump, right? Like, that used to be the thing.
That's every gas station in Brantford, so
now,
for the record.
Yeah, now. That's the new thing now. They made that decided now. But before, it was like, we're in the hood, so you pay for gas. But yeah, you could tell but by the mesh on the net if you're in the hood or not. And in Scarborough and Malvern, there used to be no hoods on no meshes on certain nets. But then you go to the rec center and there's a glass backboard. A glass backboard is Bougie Town. That's Oakville. That's Forest Hill.
The glass backboard is where Drake and his pal go, right? That's got to be it.
Listen. Drake's. That's the thing about Drake is that he got the opportunity to experience both options. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. and that's why like his boy is Prima, which he had the mesh for sure. You know what I'm saying? Empingham, that one was in the hood. That was like my church was in the hood for sure. I had Bloods at my church. You know,
God. This is the thing. So overall, like, the rhetoric online about Malvern is like, it's what I found is like a lot of people who grew up in the area are really trying to like dispel this idea that it's like a bad place, or even like they're spending a lot of time like critiquing the negative reputation that it has. So like, what's your perception of like Malvern's bad reputation? Like, how do you feel about it all?
Man, that's a great question. It kind of goes back to yours to discover. But you know what it is that growing up in it, I didn't think about it till I was older and I was like, oh yeah, that was kind of ghetto, wasn't it? Oh yeah, that was a little bit. So there's moments where I had the opportunity to really take advantage of the resources there. For example, I used to play a lot of soccer and I was at the rec center a lot of the time. So because of that, I took advantage of the resources there. There was tutors that was there. The library was like second to none. It was one of the most modern libraries I've ever seen in my life.
It's
to this day,
beautiful library.
Yeah, I'm like, I would go there now to just study because it's that good. I just live too far. There's like a beautiful park that you can go to work out with like like a track that was made out of sneakers, because I remember at one point they were going school to school to collect sneakers because apparently they were trying to make a track out of sneakers, like out of the rubber from sneakers.
Cool.
I don't know how true that was. I feel like that was a marketing ploy, but that's what they told us, And so there was like a lot of options that were really relevant to us, at growing up. There was moments that were more on the hood side for sure, but there was moments that were very resource rich, very resource rich and community driven. There used to be Sundays where they would have like a community soccer game where like the older guys would come together and have like a house league, right? But then on the side, there'd be people cooking fish and Caribbean food on the side, selling it to people, and everyone would be out there playing music and, having a vibe. Like that community aspect, you don't find that in Brantford. You don't find that in Oshawa as much. And that really was grounding to go through that living in Malvern. So, like I said, it's really yours to discover. If you want to go down like the wrong path, you can definitely find it. If you want to go to the right path, there's a lot of resources. There's like, there's science options. I was in cadets growing up. So my mom kept me on the straight and narrow. Like we talked about it before off camera that I'm my only child and we're both only children. So my mom was on me to stay on different programs, to stay out of anything. So I was in cadets.
She literally sent you to boot camp.
literally sent me to boot camp, soccer, basketball. Like he was like, you are staying busy, okay? One thing you're gonna do is be active. You're gonna run out all this energy. I come home tired.
Yeah, you're gonna be too tired to get up to shenanigans.
Exactly. So I was in everything you could think of. If someone was saying Malvern is just completely the ghetto, I cannot rock with that. Ghettos don't have that much resources. It's a strong community. Going back there always gives me, good memories and good nostalgia for sure.
I love that. I think that's a great point. Let me read you some of the stuff that I found online, because when I turned to Reddit to do some digging on Malvern, like there was tons of threads of just people being like, is this area safe? I'm thinking about moving there. Like, what do we think? Blah, blah, blah. Like thread after thread after thread after thread of people asking if the area is safe. But we also generally understand that like Reddit is just a breeding ground for negativity, because there was also just like a variety of articles that I found of like op-eds and people doing personal essays, talking about just like how wonderful of a place it is to live in, because there was just like so much culture and so much rich community of people supporting each other. There was an opinion piece from Omar Aziz in the Globe and Mail that came out in 2023 with the headline, "Scarborough made me who I am today. I love it. Why don't you?" And the tagline was, "The neighborhood I grew up in was diverse and full of working class pride, but all that its critics could see is crime and isolation." And some of the comments on those photos that I mentioned of those spray painted signs on Instagram included, Scarborough gets hate, Malvern gets hate, even the street that I lived on gets hate. 90% of my childhood was great, and even that 10% that wasn't great was a learning experience for me. It's not some war zone where you need to wear a bulletproof vest. I've literally been asked this. Somebody else said, Malvern is almost like a city within a city, as you mentioned. Malvern forever. And then somebody else said, Scarborough is the center of the fucking universe, the end. How do you feel about all of this?
Growing up, I think I witnessed maybe like 3 or 4 incidences that were, or incidents, pardon me, that were noteworthy. But the amount of resources that you can find there, I think, is amazing. Honestly, can I be honest with you? My biggest gripe is transit. It's faster to get from Oshawa to downtown Toronto than from Malvern to downtown Toronto, even though Oshawa is a 45-minute drive outside of Scarborough, So that's some of the things that I feel like are a challenge. The resources in terms of transit is a big thing. You got to go to Scarborough Town Center, and then from Scarborough Town you got to go, or to Kennedy Station. From Kennedy Station you got to go. It's a whole thing to get to downtown Toronto if you're working downtown.
So I think we should move on from this because mostly like Malvern's bad reputation stems from like a number of different issues like crime rates and socioeconomic issues and media representation, mostly cultural stereotypes and urban development challenges. Malvern actually has a really fascinating suburban history from like the 60s and 70s that's actually really interesting, that sets the stage for like basically all of this, that I would encourage all listeners to go look into. But Alex, I want to get into the juicier stuff instead. So what is like your reaction to the fact that Malvern is home to the largest population of radioactive pigeons in the world?
Not surprised, actually. So here's the thing. Where I grew up, my mom works as a health inspector.
Okay.
And she told me that there was a specific part of Malvern where people had dumped radioactive chemicals. So I was like, well, that's weird. And then I saw them building houses on top of that space. So I was like,
Yep.
oh, so they're building houses on a radioactive wasteland? What?
Yeah.
And so now that you say that, I'm like, yeah, that those two dots connect perfectly.
The dots are connecting.
Exactly. So that is crazy to hear, but it makes sense because I heard that story. Yeah.
Okay, well, here we go. So apparently these pigeons were originally from about 15 minutes away from Malvern, and they came to Malvern around 1967. And later, when it was discovered, like you mentioned, that Malvern had sort of like a radioactive area, they estimated that because the pigeons had been there for like so long and they had like repopulated over time, that this was the largest population of radioactive pigeons in the whole world. But let's be real here, Alex, because this is probably a farce. I actually found this in a Facebook video that I'm like 99% sure was satire. It had like an AI generated voice over top of it. But as you mentioned, Malvern does have radioactive history. And a history of just like radioactivity. So is what you mentioned like all you really know about this?
Yes, that's all I really know. But now, like, as you say that, what comes to my head is, what if there's radioactive people? What if people that are living on those parts of the land and are now going through radioactive, elements? I don't know what's going to happen.
Growing up, did anyone seem particularly radioactive to you?
There was one guy, actually. Yes, so there was a guy my mom used to call Mad Max. Shout out to Mad Max
of Malvern, Ontario.
Mad Max of Malvern.
Was he glowing a little bit?
No, he was not glowing. He was the opposite of glowing.
Oh no, Max.
But maybe, I don't know, he might have done something radioactive at the time. So shout out to Mad Max.
All right, well, it's time I educate you about your own hometown then, Alex.
Please, tell me.
The radioactive site is officially referred to as the McClure radioactive site. Are you familiar with McClure Crescent?
Is it close to McLevin Crescent or McLevin Avenue?
Couldn't tell you, but we could bust out a Google map at some point if we wanted to.
Tell me more.
Yeah, so in 1980, soil contaminated with radium was discovered as a housing development was being built around McClure Crescent and sort of like that whole area. And this was from a previous industrial use in the area before all the housing was there. So in the 1940s, this area was the site of Radium Luminous Industries, which was a plant that extracted radium from scrap metal for experiments in accelerated plant growth. So they were trying to like basically just do experiments around like just figuring out what radium and radioactivity could sort of do. The whole like plant was eventually shut down, and the soil on the site where the plant was radioactive. And this contaminated the ground for about 40 years until they decided suddenly that they were going to start building houses there.
On it. Oh my God, this is real.
It's real.
Oh my God.
It's 100% real. So when this was uncovered, when they were started to build these houses in the 80s, some of the kids were getting warned not to like play outside in their backyard in the dirt or anything like that. People were being like told in the area, we don't know how radioactive this whole space is. So like, don't go playing outside in the dirt kind of thing. And eventually, like 15 years later-ish, the government decided that they were going to excavate all the soil out of there. And so in 1995, eventually they just like dug it all out and excavated it from around 60 properties and moved it to like some storage facility somewhere. Not 100% sure where the storage facility is. And like immediately my brain just started imagining like those empty like storage containers just filled with dirt. I think it's actually just like a plant somewhere with just like a pile of dirt or something like that. And so they said like once all the soil was gone, that like the area wasn't going to be radioactive anymore. So realistically, there is an understanding that all of the houses that have been built there since aren't on radioactive land anymore. But of course, many residents in the area argue that is still there. And they are like, listen, this is sketch. And this was all near where the Malvern Public Library sits today. And since then, results have shown that it is not adversely affecting the local environment, but the library is possibly radioactive regardless.
That is so crazy. So my mom wasn't lying. She was telling me the truth. That is...
Your mom was not lying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I found this comment on Reddit that said, I grew up there in the 70s and well into the 2000s, and I remember as a kid those white tents being set up. They also tested soil behind what is now Malvern Mall on the same side of the street where the train tracks are on. So, and like, maybe I'm thinking of Malvern, like city center or whatever it's called, but like there's a Malvern Mall that's like pretty much dead. Nothing is growing there when it comes to business, and I'm sure nothing's growing there ecologically either. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's the exact spot where my mom was telling me, like right behind Malvern Mall, there used to be this big patch of land, and she was telling me that used to be radioactive land. So it's funny you mentioned the train tracks, because that's further back is where I grew up, like literally right behind the train tracks. So
yourself. Maybe radioactive.
Yes. maybe a little bit. But it was literally further down the line. So like she mentioned that like that patch right there, like that's where it is, you know? So then I grew up in the buildings on McLevin, which is close to it, very close to it. So yeah, that's scary you mentioned that. Ooh, hopefully I'm not radioactive.
So I don't know, Alex, would you be planting a community garden in Malvern?
I don't know. Well, they said the dirt's gone. Do you think it's no longer radioactive? What do you think in your opinion? Would you play in the new dirt?
This is the thing, Alex. I'm not smart enough to know science, so I tend to lean towards trusting the experts, but also I'm not smart enough to like trust the experts. It's like I'm kind of stuck in the middle where I'm like, listen, I've watched Chernobyl before. I've watched a whole bunch of things to do with radioactivity, and like I am not convinced that radioactive stuff isn't just like seeped into the earth. I just don't know. So I'm like, if I lived in Malvern, I probably would not build a community garden there.
Yeah, no. Neither
but I'm like just kind of like a freaked out person in general. So I don't know.
Yeah, like when I was in school, they had this phrase, when in doubt, throw it out. You know?
There you go. Yeah.
And I'm just like, any sort of doubt, bye-bye.
Yeah. I grew up with my parents telling me if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And so that's kind of where I'm leading with this.
Exactly.
So you only ever heard about the radioactivity through your mom? There was no other like sort of lore going on in the neighborhood from when you grew up?
There wasn't. So my mom, honestly, here's the thing is that because she was a health inspector, she used to come home and being like, you see those tomatoes? Don't eat those tomatoes, you know?
So your mom's not planning a community garden at all?
At all. Oh no. She's like, I'll plant a community garden in my house and that's it. Like there's no community garden at all. So she'd come home like, no tomatoes this time. Then next week, don't eat the lettuce. And I'm like, hey yo, what can I eat? Like, come on. So by the time she said over there's a radioactive spot, I was like, who cares? Whatever you say, dog. You know what really resonated with me? Kim Possible. You remember when they went to Lake Wannaweep in Kim Possible?
Did you watch? I did watch it,
man.
but Kate, my memory's so bad for some of these things for some reason. But do tell, please. Refresh my memory.
In Kim Possible, they went to a campground for like some kind of school trip or something like that. And some kid went into the lake there, and the lake was called Lake Wannaweep. And apparently somebody had dumped a radioactive waste into the lake, you know? So as a kid, I was connected like, radioactive? We never heard that before, right? And I'm like, And the kid turns out to be some kind of like monster because he goes in the lake. So I'm like, what the heck? You became a monster?
Yeah.
What's gonna happen to me?
Who knows what Mad Max is up to these days, honestly.
Who knows?
Things might have changed for him. This is a thing that came up when I did an episode about Pickering last season, which is like right beside a nuclear plant. Like it is the Springfield of Ontario, basically. And I was like asking my guest, Chidima, if like she ever really thought much about this plant. And she was like, honestly, like, no. And then we were discussing it more, and we were like, at the end of the day, if anything was to happen at this nuclear plant, like all of Ontario would be done anyway. Like, who cares? So at some point, you just have to realize, like, this is maybe your existential crisis when you realize maybe you grew up on radioactive land and you just got to move on and realize one day you're going to die anyway, you know?
Facts. It's funny you mentioned that. My videographer actually used to work at that nuclear plant in Pickering.
Okay.
Yeah, so he tells me stories about that all the time, like how he used to work in the electrical department and things of that nature. So, small world.
Okay, so if I see you and your videographer in person, I'm going to bring like one of those nuclear things and just sort of wave it around you and see if it beeps. Beep, 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 beep.
Honestly, maybe that's why we get along. It's like a subconscious radioactive level. Like that's like, oh yeah, this is home. This is home.
It's brought you together.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to talk to you about the Toronto Zoo. So you said you grew up in the area from 0 to 13. So I know you maybe didn't have too many like crazy teen times at the Toronto Zoo. But like in all of your years living in Malvern, how many times did you actually go to the Toronto Zoo? Because it's like right there.
Man, you want to hear a sad story?
You never went.
The first time I went was, I think, last year. Actually, no, I'm I'm a liar. Wow. I'm a whole liar. I went there as a kid. Not only did I go there, but I have a story about it. And I have like a whole like family story. So I went there as a child with my mom and my aunt, which is her like best friend that we call aunt type of thing. And her two kids, so I call them my cousins. And I was feeding some pigeons crackers, right? And some birds crackers. And I have crackers in my hands, and then I turn my head away, and one of the pigeons fly up to me, take the cracker out, and fly off without me even noticing. And I look back at my hand, I'm like, where's my cracker? And everyone busts out laughing at me because they're like, oh, he didn't even notice that the pigeon took his cracker or whatever bird it was. So that's my Toronto Zoo story. And to this day, my mom and my aunt will bring that up. Mm-hmm.
Those radioactive pigeons will come for you every time.
For sure. For sure.
So do you know anything about like the days that the Toronto Zoo opened, like the early days? Because it's quite chaotic of a history that I need to tell you about.
Please tell me.
Okay, so it opened in 1974. We all know the 70s were a weird, weird time. People were on drugs. People were like trying to figure out what the modern world was going to look like. Sci-fi was like booming. It was just like the 70s were a weird time. And the zoo launched with an animal costume party, and it was an animal costume skating party at Nathan Phillips Square in Toronto. And the best costume winner was going to have a llama named after them. So today, overall, Toronto Zoo, pretty solid place. It's accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums and has a certificate of good animal practice from the Canadian Council of Animal Care. So overall, like, we know that the Toronto Zoo is like a pretty responsible place when it comes to animals and stuff, which is pretty funny because like a lot of the reviews online are people being like, there was no animals when I went there, and like they were all sleeping and they all seemed miserable. But it's like, no, just genuinely they're being taken care of and they're not being like left outside when it's really freezing cold. So Toronto Zoo, we've established, a pretty solid place. It's got a 4.4 star rating on Google reviews with nearly 40,000 reviews. So overall, that's like a pretty positive sign. But in the summer of 2024, it had like a pretty chaotic year. Do you remember what happened at all? Did you hear about like what happened at the Toronto Zoo last year?
I think they're doing some construction, but other than that, I don't know. Don't know
Okay.
what else. Yeah.
So summer of 2024, a male orangutan named Kembali escaped its brand new $11 million habitat. It was just like brand newly constructed and he fully escaped. I remember seeing this all over TikTok when it was like happening live of people who were at the Toronto Zoo being like, there he is. And he was just like climbing between rafters and stuff all around the zoo. So after reviewing video footage of like how this orangutan could have possibly got out of his new enclosure, the people at the zoo reviewed like security footage and all of this footage that they got from like patrons who were there that day. They discovered that Kimbali, quote, managed to use a cartwheel-like motion to swing from a rope that was on one of the towers to the south end of the outdoor habitat, bypassing a secondary barrier near the top of the tower before grabbing a steel bracket under the platform and climbing down the tower. So he just like... basically, like, he could have been in Mission Impossible. Like,
yeah, that was like some parkour. Like, what?
Yeah.
That sounds insane. I wish I could have seen that. That sounds amazing.
Hilarious videos of this, like, cartwheel that he did just to, like, spiral down and stuff. And so on the website, the zoo described Kimbali as a free spirit who finds joy and adventure in every moment, a bundle of energy. He loves swinging high and fast through the exhibit or hanging upside down and dropping dramatically to the ground. So yeah, Kimbali, he just loves to like have a good time at the Toronto Zoo. My intern Shivani found some really funny quotes online on Reddit or comments of people being like, damn, this guy was trying to escape his like $100 million home. Like, must be nice. Like, everybody in Toronto would love to live there.
I was about to say that. Like, let's talk about the $11 million on that home. Like, that has who appraised that first off? And how did it get so lucky? Can I have an $11 million home? Can we switch places? For sure.
At like the Toronto Zoo, they're being well taken care of too. Like, why buy a down payment when you could just go live at the zoo, right?
100%. Listen, when I was there recently, I was like, man, this, like, for me as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I always look at other things. I'm like, I wonder how much money they're making. And I was just looking around. I'm like, this is a lot of money. Like, how are they making enough money to supply this place? Like, it makes no sense to me. And that's what me and my girl were doing at the time. Like, all right, so how much money do you think Toronto Zoo makes a year? You know, like, how much money do you think does it take to keep this place afloat? Because it's like, it feels like a lot.
Question.
Yeah, how much do you think, if you were to guess? How much do you think?
I don't even know. Like, I don't even know how much the tickets are. because I haven't been there in so long, but I will say, so I reached out to a friend who used to work at the Toronto Zoo for a long time, for a number of years. And I asked her if she had any like tea to spill about this place. And she told me, and this is what I'm willing to bet, I think the Toronto Zoo is putting all of its money into its animals for good reason, rather than the patron experience, because she told me that apparently like the zoo cart there is ancient and like super, super old, that one that like drives you between pavilions and stuff, to the extent that like the engine is so like it's in such bad shape that the people who drive it have to like make sure they have one pant leg down, or else if they touch it, they will get like 3rd-degree burns if they accidentally touch the engine that's like right beside them. So like, I think the way that they're making this $100 million habitat is because they just like are abandoning anything that the patrons might need to have a good time. But I will say you can drink there, so who cares, right?
Right? You can drink, you can smoke, you know, so all the people who indulge can really indulge.
Yeah. So apparently the Kimbali experience is not new. When I looked this up on Reddit, somebody said that about a decade ago, quote, I chatted with a zookeeper at the primate enclosure, and they said this stuff happens all the time, but usually it's overnight when nobody is around because the animals are a bit scared of the crowds. So at night, that's when like things get active. And this is what this friend told me too, is that like right before the park opens and then after it closes is when all the animals sort of like get rowdy. They said they'll come in the morning and one of the orangutans will be like sitting in the walkway, just chilling. And then they have to usher the orangutan back to the pens before opening hours. They're super strong and smart and agile. So a lot of the pens are not actually 100% secure. And they just have to make sure that they double check that the front doors are locked so that the orangutans don't escape the entire zoo itself. Probably makes the news when members of the public are around, but it actually happens like quite a lot. These orangutans, very smart. Very smart.
Wow. Listen, that's scary.
Yeah. So your wildest experience was like witnessing a pigeon like steal a cracker out of your hand. But apparently the animals there can like just like escape, because a Siberian tiger also escaped at one point. And it was brought back to its enclosure basically with no problems, but it just like somehow escaped. But this doesn't even compare, Alex, to when the zoo first opened. So when the zoo first opened, ahead of its grand opening, it had to make the call to shelve the main lion display when they found out that the lions could jump over the moat that was supposed to separate the lions from the public. They didn't even have a fence. They just literally had a moat between the humans and the animals. Alex's face for the listeners is just deeply ashamed.
Shake my head. Can you imagine a lion jumping over a moat coming at you? Oh my God.
This is what I mean, like very Lord. 70s of them. Like safety who cares?
Yeah, very what's that Tiger King? Yeah, very Tiger King of that.
Yeah.
You know. Sheesh.
Yeah, so apparently during its first week, 20 baboons jumped over a 10-foot wall surrounding their enclosure. One monkey swung around the rafters of the pavilion for hours. Plus, what's the worst animal of all, Alex?
The gorilla?
The humans. The humans are the worst of all. Apparently, in the first week of opening, the humans, the visitors, were absolutely feral. The children were chasing the wallabies. Somebody threw an armadillo and turtles into a crocodile pit. Teens climbed over a rhinoceros area. High school students threw stones at alligators and stole parts from AV projectors. And one elementary school teacher dropped off his entire class, told them to stay out of trouble, and promised to pick them back up at 2 p.m. So just like a wild opening week for the Toronto Zoo.
That is crazy. The guy said, "I'll be back. Y'all be safe." That's so funny.
Don't get up to any
crazy.
trouble. They're just tossing armadillos at crocodiles.
Yeah, no, tossing armadillos was crazy. Going into the rhinoceros section, you said,
Yeah.
That is preposterous.
That's insane.
That is craziness. Like, I've never looked at the rhinoceros and thought, you know what? Let me go pet that.
Okay, Alex, you have brought me a piece of hometown juicy gossip to share with me today. I don't know if it's folklore, if it's something you completely made up, or something that definitely certainly happened. I'm going to guess which one it is at the end. So please, go ahead, spill your hometown tea.
Growing up, playing soccer, there was a few coaches that I had, and I went to my coach's house for a soccer game, and I was like, man, this house is big. My coach is a Jamaican soccer player, and just came back from Jamaica, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. We watched the World Cup there. I'm like, and he had the TV mounted to the wall with the cabinets around the TV back in 2003 and 4, a flat screen. Like during that time, that's big money stuff, you know? And I was like, wow, what a life he's living. His son at the time had his own room with a curved computer. I think it wasn't curved. Let me not put that too much sauce on it. But it was like a nice flat screen computer as well. Yep. I was like, geez, he has a flat screen computer in 2003? Oh, wow.
Didn't even know these existed.
Exactly. And I ended up moving to Agent Court, like I said earlier. So I didn't end up staying on the team. But I got a call down the road when I was about 15, 16 saying, Coach got deported. And I said, what? Coach got deported? He's like, yeah. Do you remember when we were playing soccer and there'd be guys driving up to the practice and then driving away? And I'm like, here and there, not too much. And he was like, yeah, apparently my coach was selling drugs.
Oh.
And he apparently was one of the major drug contributors in Scarborough and got deported for selling drugs.
Damn.
And I was like, I would have never known. That's insane. We had amazing trips, though. It was a great soccer team.
Yeah, because he had big drug money to bring you around everywhere. You guys probably had all the best snacks.
The best snacks. It was fantastic. Remember us talking about the community games? I'm like, hold on. Well, so what's the community game? Was that? No. You're lying to me. But now I don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes.
I mean, you said there's a lot of really great community resources there. Like, who knows how far it goes in to supply those community resources? But hey, if they're giving you a glass black splash or a backboard, then
you know what I'm saying?
No complaints here.
No complaints. Look how good the library is. Remember how good is the library? Is this a laundered library? No, you know how deep the hole goes.
That's got to be true, right?
That is true.
Finally, I'm correct. I believed you, and it was true. Alex, thank you so much for joining me on Canardian. How can people support you, find all the cool stuff that you're up to? Tell us about it.
Most definitely. So you can come and find me at Hustle Over Everything. On Instagram, I'm 247 Hustler. On Twitter, I'm 247 Hustlers. TikTok, 247 Hustler. And Whitmedia Studios, where I'm recording from right now. 4K cameras, Shure SM7Bs, top quality mics. You want something in Oshawa? Come and find me.
Definitely not radioactive, probably. We're pretty sure, at least. And I'm Katie Lohr. You can find me and all the links you need to know in the show notes. And make sure you subscribe to my newsletter, Pod the North. And the Canardian theme song is by my very talented partner, Mark Allen, with support from his own hometown buddies, People Like Us. And if you like this podcast and you know someone from Scarborough or Malvern, or just like someone who's generally enjoyed a time at the Toronto Zoo, please share this podcast with them. Otherwise, I'll see you around town.